We're going to be doing 5.3, 5.6, and 5.523. 5.356 is by Representative Corbin, and 5.523 is by Representative Speakman. These are both on PFAS. Let me see. And it's a class of fluorinated organic chemicals from being used in food packaging, and also provides the Department of Health to take action to establish maximum contaminant levels for per and polyfluoroalkyl, that's a good one, substances, PFAS, in drinking water and set interim standards. Representative Corbin.
Thank you. So I'm here to introduce the first of two, which is 5.356. Many of you here will be familiar with this bill as it's the fourth time that it has been introduced. If we are to pass this bill in this session, a prohibition of the use of food packaging that contains PFAS would take effect in January 2022. Those who are unfamiliar with this bill may be asking, why should we do this? PFAS refers to a class of fluorinated organic chemicals known as forever chemicals. These chemicals do not break down in our environment or in our bodies. They're used in containers that hold our takeout dinners, microwave popcorn bags, pizza boxes, sandwich and burger wrappers, and bread and dessert wrappers. Because of their ability to resist saturation by oils and water, their presence in these products introduce them into us and into our food supply, obviously, when we ingest them. It is estimated that they are present in the blood of 97% of Americans, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. These chemicals build up in our bodies and are associated with health problems that include liver damage, birth defects, cancer, and impaired immunity. In fact, there is a recent Danish study that found that the course of COVID-19 seems to be aggravated by immunotoxic industrial chemicals such as PFAS, and may contribute to an association with disease severity. These chemicals end up in our environment when we dispose of the wrappers. They end up in our landfills when we send them to the landfill. The chemicals can then freely migrate, making their way into our food and water supply. They also end up in people's compost bins because the products often are described as biodegradable, again, making their way into our environment, and it's difficult for composters to determine whether something has PFAS in it or not because it's not labeled. It has been suggested that we should postpone taking action on this bill because of the pandemic, but I would suggest that the increased sales of takeout food means that more and more of these chemicals are entering our waste stream, which makes passing this bill more important than ever. Thank you. And with that, I would defer to my colleague.
Thank you very much, Representative. The committee would like to recognize June Speakman. Representative Speakman is present, and she is also going to testify. Let me know when you're ready.
Thank you.
Oh, you want to be voting in the affirmative to hold all bills?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry for the delay. I am here to present to the committee House Bill 5523, yes, which relates to PFAS in drinking water. I didn't hear Representative Corbin's testimony, but I'm sure she explained to you what PFAS is and the dangers that it presents to the public. This bill I'll defer to the experts who can explain to you the scientific elements of the bill. This bill would provide for the Department of Health and Department of Environmental Management to set standards and to provide a measurement protocol and to recommend remediation efforts. And did you mention the film, Dark Waters? So many of you may be familiar with the film Dark Waters, which is about the dangers of PFAS in our drinking water. It is in perhaps the drinking water supplies of 100 million Americans and in the bodies of about 97% of us. So it's an important issue to address right now. And as I'm sure Rep. Corcoran said, many efforts are underway already across the country and at the national government. And this bill would accelerate the efforts in Rhode Island to protect the drinking water supply. With that, I will defer to our experts.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee for either Representative Speakman or Representative Corcoran? Okay, thank you. We're going to go to our first witness. Oh, there's somebody there. I got to look up at the TV. Representative Fung.
I didn't know how to wait you down there. I appreciate that.
You can yell.
Thank you to all of my fellow committee members for introducing this. It's important for sure. I have a question for either Rep. Speakman or Rep. Corbin. My understanding is that these chemicals are in things such as our pizza boxes and a lot of the different types of food packaging that we'll give to the restaurant industry is using currently.
Hold on a second.
Representative Fung, we can't hear you. Can you turn your volume up?
We can't hear you, so
Can you hear me now?
better.
Much
yes.
better.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. So my question is for you guys. What is the alternative? I understand these chemicals are in things like pizza boxes and the different types of packaging the restaurants are currently using. What is the alternative to these type of packaging that they're using right now?
There are alternative packaging materials, and I think one of the experts that we have signed up to testify can tell us more about that, but there are definitely alternatives. And we would like to encourage businesses to start using those alternative packaging and have more of them be available to them.
Okay, and my question for either yourself or one of the experts is how much more expensive is that versus this? Because do we have to do any type of incentivizing programs? I think Rep. Corbin, you bring up an excellent point. Right now, more than ever, our restaurants are really heavily relying on takeout and delivery. So I think about different packaging they need to use, and they're on such small margins right now. If there's not a huge cost difference, that's fantastic. If there is, what can we do to help them? One, of course, get to a more environmentally friendly place, but also not tip them when they're working on such tiny margins right now.
Right.
Thank you.
I love that question. We don't have an incentive right now, but that's a great idea. I love that. And I don't personally know what the differences are in pricing, but I would be happy to investigate that, and I'm hoping that one of the experts can maybe give us some guidance or can respond to that question.
Thank you so much.
We have verbal and written testimony. I just want to say a bit that on the written testimony, you can go to the General Assembly main page, homepage. Down to the right-hand corner, you'll see a box. It'll say Documents. You just hit that Documents button, and you go in and go under Environment and Natural Resources, and the testimony will be there for you to read. Because of the amount of testimony we've got on this, it's not all of it there now, but it will be there by next week. Unfortunately, to take all this testimony, written testimony, and put it in a computer is a lot of work. So be patient with us. Our first witness is Meg Kerr from the Audubon Society.
James Crowley.
Who is it?
James Crowley.
James Crowley.
I don't see him on my list. Where is he? Oh, James Crowley? Yes. All right. Mr. Crowley.
Yep, I can hear you.
How you doing? This is Dave Bennett, Representative Bennett. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Bennett, and members of the committee, and thank you to Representatives Speakman and Corbin and the other sponsors for introducing this legislation. My name is James Crowley, and I'm an attorney at Conservation Law Foundation, and I'm here to speak in support of both the PFAS in drinking water and PFAS in food packaging bills. Conservation Law Foundation is a nonprofit environmental advocacy organization that works to protect the environment and public health throughout New England, and that includes working to protect against dangerous emerging contaminants like toxic PFAS chemicals. We've been working in all 6 New England states to set standards for PFAS in drinking water. I've submitted written testimony, and I want to highlight a few important points. PFAS are a class of chemicals that have been used in consumer products in the U.S. since the 1960s. They're in nonstick cookware, Scotchgard, water and stain-resistant furniture and clothing, firefighting foam, and even things like food packaging and dental floss. In short, PFAS are everywhere, and as a result, every person listening to this hearing has some level of PFAS in their blood. PFAS chemicals have been described as a public health perfect storm because, number one, they're found in all kinds of products that we use every day. Number two, they're extremely persistent in the environment and in our bodies. In other words, they take a very long time to break down. And number three, they pose risks to human health even in very small amounts, in the parts per trillion. From early on, chemical manufacturers were aware of the risks, but they prioritized profit over public health. And only in the past couple of decades have the public and regulators begun to understand the scope of the problem. The EPA has been slow to act on PFAS, but states are taking action to protect their residents. Several states in the Northeast, including Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, New York, and New Jersey, have set PFAS drinking water standards. Rhode Island currently has no regulations in place to address PFAS in drinking or surface waters, which is why the bill before you is so critically important. PFAS chemicals have been detected in drinking water, groundwater, and surface waters throughout Rhode Island. They've been found in levels that neighboring states have already declared unsafe in drinking water systems serving 14 of Rhode Island cities and towns, including Coventry, Middletown, Cumberland, Exeter, Newport, Burrillville, Pawtucket, South Kingstown, Westerly, and North Providence. Additionally, in Foster, North Smithfield, Scituate, and Gloucester, these elevated levels have been detected in school water systems. Other towns like Warwick and North Kingstown have experienced groundwater contamination events that luckily did not affect drinking water. And despite all these detections, tens of thousands of Rhode Islanders still drink water from systems that so far haven't been tested for PFAS at all. So what does this bill do about that? First and foremost, it sets a drinking water standard that will protect public health. It sets the level of 20 parts per trillion for 6 PFAS chemicals. This is the standard that Massachusetts has set in regulations and is similar to the standard in Vermont, which has 5 PFAS compounds at 20 parts per trillion. The bill before you is modeled closely on a bill signed into law in Vermont 2 years ago. Setting a drinking water standard is key to making sure that you and all your constituents know that the water coming from your taps is safe. This bill represents a meaningful set of protections for Rhode Island's people and its waters, and we ask that you support its passage. I also want to briefly mention H5356, which addresses PFAS in food packaging. While it's important to protect Rhode Islanders from the PFAS that's already out in the environment, we also need to work to stop it from getting into our environment in the first place. And when PFAS-contaminated packaging or food is discarded, whether it's thrown away, composted, or littered, the PFAS it contains makes its way into our soil, our air, and our water. We ask that you support H5356 and help to eliminate one of the pathways to exposure. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Any questions for this witness? Hearing none? He spoke. I don't see any questions. Thank you very much, James, for your testimony.
Thank you.
We have a lot of testimony to go through, so we're going to be asking you to be brief and try to limit your testimony to 2 minutes. I mean, it's only fair to the other bills that we're going to be seeing. We have over 100 witnesses on different bills, so I want you to keep that in mind. Do we have our next witness online? Hi. Who am I speaking with?
Oh, hello. This is Michelle Bowden from Clean Water Action. Can you hear me?
Yes, Michelle. This is Representative David Bennett. You'll be testifying on 2 bills today. And
Yes.
go ahead. The floor is yours.
Great. Thank you so much. Chair Bennett and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak today and for hearing these bills. I wanted to thank Representative Corbin and Representative Speakman for sponsoring them. Clean Water Action supports both bills, but I'm going to focus my testimony on PFAS in food packaging, though, of course, it's all related. In addition to its many other uses, PFAS, also known as the forever chemical, as Representative Corbin mentioned, is used as a coating on food packaging, and it sounds like Representative Fenton Fung knows about the issues with microwave popcorn bags and pizza boxes. Unfortunately, it can leach into the food we eat and build up in our bodies like mercury. This type of packaging is often seen as compostable and often even labeled as compostable. When it is composted, the chemicals leach into the soil, are taken up by the plants grown in it, and can leach into groundwater, nearby waterways, and the water we drink. At this time, it is estimated that PFAS has contaminated the water of 110 million Americans. It is also estimated that cleanup of PFAS will cost water utilities in the U.S. $12.1 billion over the next 10 years. You're going to hear from the chemical industry that getting rid of PFAS in food packaging is going to... Oh.
You may continue.
Should I? Okay, thank you. You're going to hear from them that getting rid of PFAS in food packaging is going to cause a hiccup in the supply chain, and that hiccup is going to cost money. Money, they will say, that can't be spared. But what's the alternative? Stopping PFAS at one of the sources before it comes into contact with our food and our environment is much more affordable than trying to get it out of our water before we put it into our bodies a second time. PFAS can have many negative health effects that other witnesses are going to tell you more about. The good news is that it is only found in 40% of food packaging, which means it isn't necessary. There are plenty of safe and healthy alternatives that another witness will tell you more about. Opponents to this bill are going to tell you that new generation PFAS are not harmful to health. This isn't true. If you look at their written testimony, you'll notice that it doesn't reference any studies. My testimony does, and so does all the testimony of the witnesses that are for this bill you're going to hear about. And a recent Harvard School of Public Health study showed that exposure to the new generation PFAS, which accumulate in the lungs, were associated with an increased risk of a more severe course of COVID-19. I think you heard about that from Representative Corbin. They're also going to say that the Food and Drug Administration regulates PFAS in food packaging, therefore states should not regulate them. In reality, the FDA regulations governing chemicals in food packaging are weak, not transparent, and ineffective. In my written testimony, I explain the ineffective FDA process in greater detail. Another very important factor is that PFAS affects low-income communities and communities of color disproportionately. Low-income communities often do not have access to fresh and unpackaged food. Therefore, they have greater exposure rates to this dangerous chemical. We'll be in good company if this bill is passed. In 2020, New York joined the growing list of states that have banned PFAS in food packaging. This year, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Vermont, and 6 other states are also considering this same legislation. Some companies like Whole Foods and Trader Joe's have committed to removing food packaging with PFAS from their stores, and McDonald's just announced to get rid of PFAS in its food packaging by 2025. Actions by these larger companies are helpful, but we need you to help the smaller companies that don't want to serve their food in toxic packaging but have no control over their supply chain. They can't tell whether or not they are serving PFAS. So we need you to help them out by passing this bill.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to say one more thing. Sorry.
Right.
I want to say respectfully that I've testified before a House committee on this bill 3 times. This will be the 4th time, twice before HEW and once before Environment. This bill has not once received a vote. From the outside looking in, there is something very wrong with that fact. Please, let's be transparent this year and vote on this bill. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions for this witness?
I have a question, but not for this witness. I want to ask
Representative McEntee.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to ask the sponsor, Rep. Corbin, give us an example of what kind of packaging. I heard Representative Fenton Fung say pizza boxes. Now, I'm surprised at that because they're generally cardboard, right?
It's the coating, I think, that's on the pizza box on the inside that prevents the PFAS.
You know how they put that piece of paper? Is that it?
Probably that too.
Okay.
It's whatever keeps the grease from leaching out through the
I
box.
see.
You know how you feel like a little bit of a shiny coating on the
Yeah,
inside?
yeah.
I think that is where,
Now, and how about styrofoam? Is it in that as well?
I'm not aware of it being in styrofoam.
I think it's in everything.
There's other toxic
So when
toxic
you, like when you go
chemicals.
to a Chinese restaurant and you get the little box, that has kind of a coating on it,
It
right?
might be in that. It's not, you see, we don't know all the time what it's in, so.
Yeah, she said like 40% of
Right.
the packaging has it, and I'm
Right,
trying to
and
figure out what is it that does
The
have it and what
popcorn-
doesn't.
The popcorn bags has it for sure.
Those are the microwave ones, right?
Right, the microwave ones, right. And many, like those things that they wrap the sweets in at the bakery, the little, I think the little things that you grab them with, the little
Oh, yeah, yeah.
wrappers. And the bags too, because they want something that won't stick to what you just
Oh, I
purchased.
see. So it's the
a
coating.
non-stick coating.
It's
Yes.
not the actual packaging, it's the coating that they
It's the
put on it.
coating, yes, I do believe that's correct.
All right,
Yes.
well, thank you. I just
Sure.
was confused.
It's like a Teflon pan, you know, non-stick, and Gore-Tex jackets have it. It's in a lot of different
Yeah.
things we use, but we don't want to be eating it.
No, not at all. Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
I just want to
Yes,
respond.
Vice Chair
Represent-
Phillips.
Representative McEntee, I believe this coffee cup has got the PFAS in it for the lining to keep the liquid from saturating the cup and that. So it's in things that we would think every day that it's not in, but it is.
Yeah, because we keep saying, even to these restaurants, you know, get rid of the styrofoam, go to the little cardboard boxes that we now see, the brown ones you see a lot of places.
Correct.
And so we're still not doing it right, is what you're saying, because, you know, we are, I give the restaurants a lot of credit for trying to get away from the styrofoam, or the polystyrene is, I guess, the real name of it. But, so we're still one step behind. We need to go
Right,
one
and-
step further and get rid of that coating.
I by no means want to put this on the backs of restaurant owners,
No.
because I don't think they do this knowingly. We
No.
need the suppliers to bring stuff that's PFAS-free into the state.
And I
make it
like
available to
that the
them.
fact that you're pushing it out till January 22, so
Yes,
we'll see how quickly it will take to adjust.
right.
Thank you.
And I do think there's a witness who's going to talk to us about alternatives to PFAS that you can coat products with so they won't leak. I think that's coming up.
Great.
Representative McLaughlin.
Can you hear me? Okay. Now, have they, Representative, have they established any type of mortality rate in reference to, you know,
Jim, talk into the microphone.
yeah, let me take this off.
Because we can't hear you.
Representative, have they established nationally any type of mortality rate in reference to what we're discussing here today?
There was a big, I know they have determined the blood levels in many Americans, and there was a huge study in West Virginia where that's what this movie Dark Waters is about, and that there was a lot of cancer in that. There was a cancer cluster there, which is really what, and there were animals dying that were drinking the water that had been polluted by PFAS by, I think was it DuPont? By the DuPont plant. And so that's what alerted to them this health hazard. But I don't know if nationally there's, I'll have to look into that for you. I don't know right now.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, we're going to go to our next witness. Hi. Can you hear me?
Hello? I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Is this Joe and Milas?
It is. Is this Chairman Bennett?
It sure is. Joan, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chairman Bennett and members of the committee. I'm Joan Panichis-Milas. I am the lobbyist for the American Chemistry Council, which is the trade association for all of the chemical companies in the country. And we have represented ACC for decades and have worked collaboratively with the state and with all the regulators over these many years. I have two folks who are in the queue waiting to testify on your legislation, but I just wanted to remotely introduce myself to new people who aren't familiar with my role here, and thank Chairman Bennett for always being on the other side of the phone during COVID as I constantly called him on the wonderful things that ACC has been doing to help this pandemic over the last so many months. So I just wanted to offer my assistance to all of you. I sent a greeting letter to all of you during the holidays. You have my contact information, so please feel free to reach out at any time on these bills or any bills over the session. This is a new format for me as well, having been a lobbyist for almost 30 years. This is new to me too, so I'm here to help in any way that I can. And thank you very much, and I look forward to working with all of you this session.
Thank you, Joan. Any questions for Joan? Seeing none, thank you very much, Joan. I appreciate
you,
your
Chair.
testimony.
Thank you.
Can we go to our next witness? Hi, can you hear me? Meg, you
Yes, I
there?
can. Yes, I am.
Hi, Meg. This is Dave Bennett from the Environmental Natural Resources Committee. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Meg Kerr, and I am the Director of Policy at the Audubon Society of Rhode Island. And I'm here tonight to speak in support of both bills, both of the PFAS bills, H5323 and H5356. Most of my comments will be in responding to the drinking water bill, but yeah. So as you've been hearing tonight, PFAS is the newest collection of long-lasting, toxic, widely used chemicals that can contaminate communities and drinking water supplies. You heard about how CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, have monitored humans, and we know that an awful lot of them have PFAS in their blood, 97%. It's also worth noting that wildlife has PFAS in their blood. It's not surprising because it's so ubiquitous. But in Michigan, they now are monitoring for PFAS in wildlife and actually have had advisories to not eat deer that have been hunted based on elevated levels of PFAS in their blood. So it really, to me, illustrates how widely in the environment these chemicals are and how concerning they are. They're also found in birds and wildlife, which is why Audubon is concerned. We heard about how the PFAS is coming from food packaging, it's used in firefighting foams, it's in nonstick pans. When PFAS is monitored for in the environment, it's found in high levels, especially near areas where these firefighting foams have been used. But the more scientists look for PFAS, the more they find it. And as you heard earlier, it's been found in the water and soil in more than 1,300 communities in 49 states, including ours here in Rhode Island. So the drinking water bill mandates that the state agencies responsible for our drinking water protection apply the strategies they routinely use to monitor and manage chemicals in the drinking water to the suite of PFAS chemicals. The Department of Health would adopt minimum contaminant levels for PFAS as they do for many other chemicals. And prior to the adoption of those minimum contaminant levels, the water supplies would be required to monitor for PFAS, and the health department would adopt standards for those chemicals. Currently, the department is using a health advisory of 70 parts per thousand, and the bill would establish a 20 parts per thousand maximum contaminant level. I wanted to just talk a little bit about my town. I live in North Kingstown, and North Kingstown is one of the communities that has elevated levels of PFAS. One of the speakers earlier said that it was not of concern, but we got a letter from the town saying that they have found elevated levels of PFAS, and it's parts per trillion, not parts per thousand, in some of our drinking water wells. So as a resident, I am concerned about exposing myself and my family to PFAS. And if you look at the Department of Health website, there's a section on PFAS and PFAS contamination of water. The site does a great job describing the dangers of PFAS and how Rhode Islanders are getting exposed to these chemicals. It includes a description of how unborn babies and young children are exposed to the chemicals and list steps that we should take to minimize our risk if PFAS is detected in the drinking water. The steps are really strong. It says don't boil your water, bottled water, use water from a safe source for food preparation, cooking, brushing teeth, and any activity that might include swallowing water, be careful. Consider using formulas that does not require adding water. So all of those recommendations may apply to me because I live in North Kingstown, but I don't know because I don't have a lot of information about how much PFAS is in the water and what I should do about it. So we really need the drinking water, the state agencies working on drinking water to provide the public with the kinds of information and the guidance that we need to manage our risks to the PFAS. And on the food packaging bill, we know that the PFAS is problematic. This seems like an important and not a huge step to take. And I encourage you all to pass both these bills out of the committee and to the floor. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Meg. Any questions for Meg? Vice Chairman Phillips.
Good afternoon, Meg. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks.
Good. Just two questions, and the second one hinges on your answer on the first one. We've had testimony that says that it builds up, these PFAS builds up in all of our bodies, including plant life, wildlife, and humans. Can we get rid of it? Can we flush it out? Can we, and if we can, how long does it take for it to get out of our bodies?
Yeah, I'm not a total expert on it, but I was reading up about this a little bit today, and I think that it is removed from the body extraordinarily slowly, which is why we're seeing it everywhere, and which to me argues for let's stop it at the source, and then we can continue to see how well we are able to process it and get rid of it, but we don't want to keep adding the PFAS into the environment. It's a little bit like other toxic chemicals. We've worked with DDT, for example, that bioaccumulated in birds and caused the thinning of the eggs and the near extinction of some of our beautiful large birds.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Meg.
Thank you, sir.
Have a safe night. Now, next witness. Okay. Hello? You there, Lauren? Oh, here we go.
You will be now.
Hello, Lauren.
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, this is Representative Bennett from Environment and Natural Resources. Go ahead and testify.
Good afternoon, Chairman Bennett and members of the House Committee. I'm here to testify in support of HB 5523 and 5356. My name is Dr. Lauren Richter. I am an assistant professor of environmental studies at the Rhode Island School of Design. I collaborate with a group of academic researchers who have been studying the development of science and regulation on PFAS since 2015. That year, we started our work with this question, despite being aware of ubiquitous population exposure to a class of naturally indestructible compounds, a number of which were established as likely carcinogens by 2013. Why has the federal government failed to develop any regulatory standards for PFAS compounds? We are still puzzled. I urge you to consider that public knowledge of PFAS today is due directly to repeated contamination episodes, only brought to light by communities so contaminated that they could visibly identify clusters of adverse animal and human health effects. The mass die-off of cattle on the Tennant farm in the 1990s, the human cancer cluster in Hoosick Falls, New York in 2014, and many others across the world. It is only because of examples like these that litigation and independent scientific research have ultimately come to pass. So what does this say about federal chemical regulation? If there's no substantive government oversight or scrutiny of new and existing chemicals, the public has no protection from PFAS. Only chemical manufacturers have substantive knowledge of which PFAS are in use. Over the last 6 years, increased research on the toxicity, exposure, and biological activity of PFAS continues to grow. As independent scientists observe, this body of research shows a clear trend line. The more we know, the more we are concerned. Health guidelines are continually lowered, and the more the public must spend on expenses such as water filtration, not to mention personal health costs. Thus, state-level action is not just critical, but at this point, the only barrier or collective means of protecting public health and the environment from this growing, practically permanent trade secret protected mixture of PFAS compounds that we have all been exposed to for decades and will continue to be as long as new PFAS are approved by the EPA and existing ones remain unregulated. A recent journal article by a global PFAS scientist, Dr. Ian Cousins, argues that on the basis of their unparalleled persistence alone, this class should be phased out. So to close, I ask you to consider making legislation on PFAS in food packaging and drinking water as strong as possible, prioritizing protecting human health and the environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Any questions? Seeing none, Doctor, thank you very much for your testimony. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Our next witness. Hello, Sean.
Hi, Chair Bennett?
Yes. How you doing?
Hi. Great.
The committee's yours.
Thank you. I'll alter my testimony and shorten it up in consideration of the rest.
Yeah, I'm going
I
to remind people, try to keep it, to 2 minutes or so. But go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it, Chair Bennett, members of the committee. My name is Sean Swearingen, and I am testifying in opposition with amendments on H5356. I'm a director at the American Chemistry Council, and I'm here on behalf of the Alliance for Telemer Chemistry Stewardship. Our mission is to promote the responsible production, use, and management of fluorotelamer-based products, while also advocating for a sound science and risk-based approach to regulation. On behalf of the members of ATCS, we respectfully request that to H35356, you, one, set the effective date to December 31st, 2023, and second, allow for the continued sale, distribution, and use of effective products that are already in commerce in Rhode Island as the effective date of the Act. PFAS are a diverse universe of chemistries with a wide range of critical uses, as mentioned already here today. For instance, fluorotelemers, just one type of many PFAS, are used in food packaging applications, but are also currently being used in medical garments, hospital gowns, drapes, and divider curtains that create a barrier that provides life-saving protection against infections and transmission of diseases like COVID-19 in hospitals. Chemical industry supports a comprehensive approach to managing current polyfluoroalcohol substances that helps to ensure protection of human health and the environment. This includes appropriate science-based policies and regulations. My written testimony also cites studies if you'd like further review. Food packaging is strictly regulated by the FDA, and substances used in food packaging must complete a rigorous review process before they may be sold or distributed in the U.S. As part of this review, the FDA requires the submission of extensive information on food contact, substance itself, any potential impurities or degradation products. Thus, the PFAS compounds currently authorized for use in food packaging in the U.S. are supported by a robust body of scientific data that's being comprehensively reviewed by the FDA. As a result of increased attention to the failure of PFAS, the FDA has reached an agreement and assessment that with manufacturers for the voluntary phase out of PFAS containing food packaging as of January 1st, 2024. As reflected in its announcement of this agreement, FDA concluded that this phase out period is needed to avoid unnecessary food supply chain and market disruptions. In addition, for alignment with the FDA, the effective date of the bill should be extended to avoid hardship and disruption.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness? Representative McLaughlin. Turn your mic on, James.
Sean?
Yes.
This is Representative McLaughlin. You know, we're told that this component is hard to break down. Could you elaborate and give us a better understanding, a better idea of the molecular structure of this component? Because, you know, I'm of the, I look and say any matter should be able to break down. I don't care what it is, you know, but we're led to believe that this component can't be broken down. You know, you with your chemical knowledge, can you give us a brief summary of the molecular structure and let us know if this can indeed be broken down?
Thank you, Representative. I do not have the scientific background to break that down for you, but I'm happy to pull that research and give it to the committee after the hearing today.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sean. Any more questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Sean, for your testimony. Okay, our next witness. Hi, Dr. Slitt.
Yes, this is she.
Hi, this is David Bennett from the Environment and Natural Resources Committee. Go ahead and testify.
Okay. Good afternoon, Honorable Chair Bennett and committee. I'm here before you in support of House Bill 5356 and House Bill 5523. My name is Dr. Angela Slitt. I'm a professor of pharmacy at the University of Rhode Island. I'm a toxicologist by training. I'm also one of the members of a research team of a $9 million NIH grant that is administered through the University of Rhode Island to study the harmful effects of PFAS. So I guess one way that we could talk about PFAS is, you know, and how are they like drugs, or would they ever be approved as drugs? And so as a professor who teaches students about toxicology and drug safety, these are a class of chemicals that would never get approved to be given to women or pregnant women or children. And the reason why is because the PFAS that we know the most about, such as PFAS and PFOA, have numerous adverse health effects. They're associated with high cholesterol, thyroid issues, certain cancers, and in particular, a big concern with these are that they have a very long half-life. So what that means is that it takes them 5 to 7 years approximately, for PFOA a little bit shorter, to be cleared from the human body. And so when we're thinking about that, it's the only way you can talk about changing your behaviors, what products you may have in your household. But the reality is the most effective way in the United States we were able to lower our body burden of PFAS and PFOA was through eliminating the use of those chemicals, even though they still persist. In addition, when we think about vulnerable populations like women and children and infants, these are chemicals that cross the placenta. They are able to easily get into breast milk. They're actually very easily able to get into cow's milk. And so the concerns is that a mother who wants to breastfeed her child will also be passing along PFAS to that child as well. And we actually see this type of phenomena occur when we do these types of experiments in rodent models. And so, you know, the bigger concern with PFAS is the persistence. We don't know with emerging PFAS, we don't know very much about their toxicity, and they are getting to the point where there are just too many. There are thousands. I think the latest numbers, and someone will probably correct me, but close to 7,000 that we don't know much about. So it's taken us years to know just about the human health effects for just a few PFAS, and now there are so many that it's almost like whack-a-mole. It's too hard for us to keep up with understanding how they get into and out of the body and their toxicological and harmful effects. So when we come back to the fact that, you know, if we take a drug, we know that those drugs are designed to get cleared easily from the body, and they wouldn't stay around for that long in the body. But for PFAS, even the shorter chained ones that are the new replacement ones, some of those have half-lives of, say, 32 days. Nobody would give a drug that would last 32 days as a half-life for pregnant women and infants. So they're they have a very unique chemistry. They have a persistence in the body. The body is not able to break them down, and they're very easily able to get into breast milk and cross the placenta. So those are my major concerns as a toxicologist. Sorry.
Could you try to wrap it up? We've got a lot of testimony.
I'm all set.
Oh, any questions for the doctor? Representative Speakman.
Thank you. Dr. Slick, we had a question, I don't know if you heard it before your testimony, about the molecular structure of PFAS and why it doesn't ever break down. Can you quickly and not too scientifically explain that?
Yeah, so PFAS are often a combination of carbon and fluorine, and those from an electrochemical standpoint, it's very hard to pull them apart. It's nearly impossible for the body to metabolize them. So unlike, say, Tylenol gets metabolized in your body. PFAS cannot be broken down by the endogenous metabolism in your body because the fluorine-carbon bonds are too strong. It's like a Lego that doesn't want to come apart.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Any more questions? Thank you, Doctor. You have a safe night.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Next witness. I'm going to try to remind the witnesses again to be brief and don't read to us. We've got your written testimony. Speak from your heart. Hi, who am I speaking with?
This is Greg Garrett.
Hey, Greg, this is Representative David Bennett. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Representative Bennett, members of the committee. I'll be trying to be very brief. You've heard a lot of testimony about how bad PFAS is. I echo all of that and ask you to pass these bills. I also want to say that I've listened to the chemical lobbyists for many years, and they always have a woe is me tale that they can't meet some standard or it's too hard to eliminate this stuff. And yet every time we make these kinds of recommendations, every time we set standards and put in regulations and ban products, the American industry has been able to innovate. And actually the economic benefits of these regulations has been vast. 10 to 1 as opposed to how much the cost of compliance is, 40 to 1 on certain things. That when they tell you that they can't do this or it's hard, they're just giving us the old song and dance. I'm happy to take questions.
All right, any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Greg, for your input.
Thank you, Chairman Bennett.
Have a great night. Next witness. Polly. She's not there yet. Hello, Polly. Excuse me. Hello?
Hello.
Could you turn down the instrument you have with you so we can hear you? We won't get feedback.
Yep.
Is this Polly? Barry.
this is
I'm
Mike
sorry,
Bradley.
it's Barry. I don't have Barry. Michael Bradley. I bet you that's your name.
This is Mike Bradley.
How you doing, Mike? This is David Bennett
I'm
from
doing
the
well.
Environment and Natural Resources Committee. The floor is yours.
Hi, Chair Bennett. Oh, great. Thank you, Chair Bennett and members of the committee. Sorry about that. Hi, Chair Bennett and members of the committee. Thank you for your time today. I just wanted to briefly say that I am in support of both bills, HB 5356 and HB 5332, and I urge you to pass them. I'm calling because of the relationship of PFAS to my business in composting. Since they're present in compostable packaging, what happens is they often get into my system, and this is disruptive of my business. I often have to add an extra step to my process to ensure I fish out compostable molded plates because of the problem and the association of PFAS with these products. I can't distinguish the difference between what has PFAS on it and what doesn't. But actually, I don't think that's the most interesting aspect, and I don't think in and of that self will convince you. What I'd like to do is echo what Mr. Greg Garrett had mentioned, is that in the industry, if there are no regulations, what happens is our manufacturers are often surprised and caught off guard when they find that there's contaminations in their products. This has happened multiple times with different situations. In this situation, there's now testing companies that are doing limited testing. They're doing in-field testing, and like SPC Global, that are alerting manufacturers when they find fluorine in their products. This is disruptive to their process, and it's costly to them to try to rectify that when they're in production. What they would really like would be to be prepared, and by setting regulations, by passing bills where you set limits, you're going to put in place a new industry, a new support industry that will incentivize testing labs to open, and it will increase support to those manufacturers at economies of scale that will allow the testing to drop and ensure that manufacturers have a good understanding of what they're putting into their products that they're trying to sell. They know that their customers don't like the idea that they could be putting their children at risk. I'm sure you don't like that idea. I'm sure your children and grandchildren, and I urge you to consider it in that respect. How you'd be helping both the industry, and you'd be ensuring that you can rest assured and sleep at night that your grandchildren are protected as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Michael.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it. Take care.
Our next witness? Hi, Polly.
Yes.
Hi.
Good afternoon.
You have verbal and written. Please don't read to us, talk to us, and try to be brief, up to 2 minutes,
Okay.
okay? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, good afternoon, Chair Bennett and members of the House Environment and Natural Resources. I'm Polly Berry from Rhode. You have my written testimony, but I want to give you a sense of why I feel strongly about this bill. I'm a recently retired registered nurse and have been mostly in home and community health. I've been asked many questions or asked for advice from patients, neighbors, family members. It's not unusual, as nurses have for many years been ranked as the most trusted profession. Many of the questions often asked are, how can they protect their health and the health of their families? Also, these questions couldn't be answered because we didn't know
certain chemicals were in our ground, our water, and were persistent, and we didn't know, and our patients didn't know that they could avoid this. This is when we turn to you. You have the ability to pass legislation that would prohibit one of these chemicals, PFAS, in food packaging. It's been done. We can phase it out and prohibit BPA, flame retardants, Agent Orange, chemical toxics to human and ecosystems. We've done all of that. You can now do what we need for our families and our constituents, excuse me. I also like to share recently a brochure that came from the water department here, where I noticed that PFAS are in our water here in Warwick. And I support also 5523. Thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Polly.
Okay. See you in the village.
Now, yes, you will. Good night.
Night.
Hi. Who am I speaking with?
Oh, hi, my name is Sue Chang.
Oh, hi, Sue. This is David Bennett from the Environment and Natural Resources Committee. Try to keep your testimony brief. Try not to repeat what's already been said. And the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And I think my testimony will help to answer or clarify some of the questions that came up earlier about product types and what's in it. So my name is Sue Chang. I'm the Pollution Prevention Director at the Center for Environmental Health. I'm testifying in strong support of HB 5356 and HB 523, but I will be focusing on HB 5356. The Center for Environmental Health is a national nonprofit organization whose mission is to protect the public from exposure to toxic chemicals. We partner with public and private institutional purchasers, such as government agencies, businesses, universities, K-12 schools, and healthcare institutions across the country to help them identify and procure environmentally preferable products and services, leveraging their collective buying power to eliminate harmful chemicals such as PFAS from the market. And, over the past 2 decades, this group of fluorinated compounds has come under increasing scrutiny from toxicologists, ecologists, and regulators because of their pervasiveness, extreme persistence in the environment, and toxicity. We're particularly concerned about PFAS because of their endocrine or hormone-disrupting properties at extremely low levels, and especially their ability to decrease the effectiveness of vaccines in children. Since 2017, CEH started researching and has tested hundreds of single-use food serviceware products like plates, bowls, clamshells, and other takeout containers, food trays, and food boats for PFAS. We tested a variety of material types such as bamboo, palm leaf, molded fiber, paper and paperboard, bioplastics such as polylactic acid or PLA, conventional plastic, and mixed materials. When we released our results in early 2018, we found high fluorine levels indicating the likely use of PFAS in 100% of the molded fiber products. We actually did not find many products with PFAS made of the other material types. So you won't find them typically in the coffee cups that somebody was holding up. There are actually pizza boxes that don't have PFAS. There are also alternative, the microwave popcorn bags that don't have it now, and such as the deli wraps and the sandwich wraps too. But since then, we're seeing an increasing number of PFAS-free molded fiber products coming out on the market from a variety of manufacturers such as World Centric, Eco Products, Footprint, Repurpose, Preserve, Carrot Earth, and Hudamaki. And institutional purchasers are leading the way in demanding products without PFAS. States such as Minnesota, New York, Massachusetts, cities such as San Francisco and Berkeley are already prohibiting PFAS in their foodware contracts. Companies like Genentech, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts, as well as school districts around the country are also changing their specifications for foodware and will not buy it with PFAS or styrene actually, and some are switching to reusables to stop using single-use altogether.
So could you conclude?
Yep.
In conclusion?
I have like 2 more. Yep. I wanted to say that global food chains such as McDonald's and Taco Bell have committed to phase it out. Sweetgreens and Chipotle have already switched. And, the leading certification for compostability organizations, they've both changed their standards to no longer allow PFAS in products that they certify as compostable. So, in conclusion, though, the cost of cleaning the stuff up, like once they are out in the environment, it's really difficult to clean up. It's costing us billions, and we shouldn't be using these in the first place. So the market's already heading in this direction, and I strongly urge you to take action and stop the continued and unnecessary source of PFAS. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Representative Carson has a question for you.
Actually, I have a comment I want to make. I think that one of the most interesting things that this witness just said was that there are companies out there that are switching. Too often, we think it's like this or that. And I think that it's very important to say, and I will speak to this more later, that there is movement in the marketplace. There are companies, national organizations, she mentioned Wendy's, Burger King, I don't know, a couple fast food organizations. They are actually already doing this. So it can be done. And so I don't think we should fall victim to the, oh my God, it can't be done, I'm going to go out of business, because it can be done. We're just catching up to what's going on in the marketplace.
Thank you, Representative. Representative McEntee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to ask this witness a question about the packaging. I may have missed some of it because I had to go out and take a phone call, but the alternate packaging, how do they keep the grease and the food from, if you do a takeout order, say, how do you keep it from dripping out of the packaging?
Well, there's different types of alternatives, and depending on what the use is and the type of food, you can use different materials. And some of them, like, I think somebody referenced the Chinese takeout container earlier. Some of those are actually just have a plastic coating or some other type of grease barrier, but it's not PFAS.
Oh, I see.
And we actually have we have a public database of all the products that we've tested that show which ones had high levels of fluorine and which ones didn't. And you can actually see like the material type and the containers and all of that in our public database.
One other question. I mean, you see a lot of Italian restaurants, like if you get any kind of pasta, it all comes in the plastic containers. Those are not part of the problem, are they?
The plastic typically has not been shown to have PFAS. And then there's also, aluminum takeout containers. There's a variety of different types of alternatives that could be used.
Right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you. Any more questions? Hi, Representative Fenton Fung.
Thank you, Chairman. For the witness itself, my question really is, how much more expensive are these alternate packaging than what's currently in mass use? You mentioned a few of these big restaurants.
Try to speak up a little bit, Representative.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah. All right, forget it. Forget it.
We can't hear you.
Go ahead, we can hear you, it's just difficult. And I'm deaf anyway, so.
All right, I apologize. How much more do these packages cost? And that's really the thrust of my question. You rattled off some big companies that have massive buying power. I'm thinking of the small mom and pop shop that is pervasive here in Rhode Island. These alternate packages, what's the cost differential?
Well, it depends. So if you're talking, and like I said, really where we found the majority of the problem is in the molded fiber products. And so, they actually had to go and start finding a whole new alternative, right, for this material type. So when it first comes out, of course, there's going to be a price increase. But I think as the market is increasing and more companies are coming out with alternatives, more purchasers are demanding this, it's going to start bringing the price down and it's going to start changing that. But not everybody has to buy molded fiber either. So there's all these different products that are available that don't necessarily cost more, because molded fiber is somewhere in the middle of the price cost for these different material types.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you very much for your testimony. It was very informing.
Thank you.
Our next witness? Hi, Laurel.
Hi there. Are you
Hi,
ready?
this is Representative David Bennett. Welcome to the Environment and Natural Resource Committee. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I appreciate this opportunity to provide public comment on the food packaging bill. My name is Laurel Shader, and I am a research scientist at Silent Spring Institute, where we have been studying PFAS in drinking water since 2009. My research focuses on exposures to PFAS from drinking water, food packaging, and consumer products and potential related health effects. I am part of the research team for the STEEP Superfund Research Program, led by University of Rhode Island in collaboration with researchers from Harvard and Silent Spring Institute. I'm also leading 2 PFAS-related health studies, including one of the 7 within a CDC and Agency for Toxic Substance and Disease Registry multi-site PFAS health study. I applaud Rhode Island for considering this bill to ban PFAS in food packaging. As you consider this legislation, I'd like to share some key points based on our own research and on other published scientific studies. The first is that PFAS exposures have been linked to a wide range of health effects. These include cancer, effects on the thyroid function, immune suppression, low birth weight, and decreased fertility. Evidence that PFAS can suppress immune system function has raised concerns among scientists about increased susceptibility to COVID-19 among highly exposed people. A recent study in Denmark by my colleague, Harvard professor Philippe Grandjean, found an association between exposure to a PFAS chemical and more severe COVID-19 symptoms. Some PFAS are no longer produced in the U.S. because of their toxicity and their ability to accumulate in the body for years. Now, a growing body of evidence is raising concerns about newer PFAS chemicals, including short-chain PFAS, that are being used as replacements in food packaging and other products. In 2020, the Food and Drug Administration withdrew approval from some short-chain PFAS in food packaging because of newfound toxicological effects. My second point is that PFAS in food packaging is common and contributes to PFAS exposure in the general population. I led a 2017 study that tested more than 400 fast food packaging samples from 27 fast food chains throughout the country. We found that almost half of the paper wrappers and about 20% of paper board samples, such as boxes for French fries, contained fluorine, a marker for PFAS chemicals. PFAS have also been found in other types of food packaging, such as microwave popcorn bags and molded fiber containers for takeout. Prior research, including studies by the FDA, found that PFAS can migrate out of food packaging and into food. Newer generation PFAS chemicals, the ones now being used in food packaging, are even more likely to migrate out of food packaging. I also co-authored a 2019 Silent Spring Institute study with a nationally representative sample of Americans. We found that people who reported eating more restaurant food, including fast food and pizza, tended to have higher levels of PFAS in their blood, as did people who ate more microwave popcorn. We think that these associations are due, at least in part, to the use of PFAS in food packaging. Finally, we need a class-based solution that phases out non-essential uses of PFAS. According to the EPA, there are over 9,000 PFAS compounds, which means that it's simply not possible to evaluate the toxicity of each compound individually. The American Public Health Association and a growing number of expert scientists, including Linda Birnbaum, former head of the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, have recommended approaching PFAS as a class and reducing overall PFAS exposure. Eliminating non-essential uses of PFAS, such as in food packaging, is a step in the right direction. Thank you very much for your consideration of these comments.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. You have a good night.
Thank you. You too.
And next. Hi, Greg, you there? Hello?
Hi.
Hi, Greg. You're a last witness
Yes,
on
sir.
this bill, so try to be brief and to the point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for listening. I know it's a long day. I'm testifying in support of both bills, and I'd particularly like to explain why we need to regulate this whole class of chemicals. My name is Gregory Howard. I'm an environmental health scientist and independent consultant living in Providence, and I have extensive experience with PFAS and with PFAS regulations. The movie Dark Waters has been referenced a couple of times, and I actually worked on the studies involved in that case, and we were the ones getting panic calls from Mark Ruffalo about how slow we were moving. That was the C8 science panel because we studied the C8 carbon compounds, and those are the ones we were studying then are now globally regulated, globally banned under the Stockholm Convention. They're clearly really bad chemicals. Once the toxicity of those C8 compounds became apparent, industry got excited about the C6 carbon compounds, thinking they might be less toxic. And at this point, they're less studied, but they certainly operate by the same mechanism of action as the C8 chemicals, and they're clearly not better substitutes. And this is what we're finding, that the industry can stay a little bit ahead of us all the time by creating new products. But as we study them, we find that this whole class is toxic. And we've even found that with the so-called safe alternative Gen X that industry has been promoting. It is absolutely a no-brainer that this stuff should not be in food packaging. In the C8 Science panel, we found connections to high cholesterol, ulcerative colitis, thyroid disease, testicular cancer, kidney cancer, pregnancy-induced hypertension. And the iceberg here under the dark waters, I guess, is that there's thousands and thousands of these chemicals, at least 5,000. The new ones are not necessarily safer, they're just unstudied. So we need to regulate this whole class. To address a couple of questions just very quickly, the fluorine, these are hard to degrade because the fluorine-carbon bond is actually the strongest one in organic chemistry, the strongest bond. They don't really get flushed out of the body. They can move out of the body, but very, very slowly. And the industry will tell you that the FDA has approved these, but the FDA requires very little toxicity data in order to approve these. And under one rule, they actually allow the industry to self-determine and not even inform the FDA of their conclusion of safety. So I encourage you to bring this bill to a vote. It's really important. We have to address the whole class of compounds, and we have to do it soon before newer and less studied compounds are put into use again. So thank you very much, and I'd be happy to take questions now or anytime.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Okay, I'm going to be turning this over to Vice Chair Phillips because I have a bill downstairs that I need to testify on. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Can you keep the hearing on the bill open for just a second? So, you didn't just close the hearing on the bill, did you, Chairman?
No.
Okay, good, thank you.
All right. All right, that concludes the hearings on,
Mr. Vice Chair, I wanted to say one thing.
I'm sorry.
The League of Cities and Towns contacted me earlier today, and so there may be a sub-A on the water bill, they just reached out to me, so
Okay.
I just wanted to go on record.
So they're
saying-
going to submit an amendment or suggestions for an amendment for you?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so
Thank you.
we will look forward to their information
Yes.
so that we can gather that to make sub-A.
Thank you.
Okay. To finish these two bills, we have written testimony that people, as Chairman Bennett said, can find on the website homepage underneath written documents. Just have to look up the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources, and you can view any of the bills, written testimony on these bills. But we have written testimony from House Bill 5523 from Rhode Island Waterworks in favor of the bill, Esteban Tamayo against the bill, RISD in favor of the bill, Clean Water Action in favor of the bill, Jennifer, looks like Whiting in favor of the bill, Mr. and Mrs. Allard in favor of the bill, Brianna Petracher in favor of the bill. Most of them are all in favor of the bill. Gina Giorgio, Gina Solitrio, Save the Bay, Amanda Messimer, Audubon Society, and Joshua Tarantino, all in favor of that bill. Written testimony for House Bill 5356. Against the bill is Julian Chin, Sean Swearingen, Esteban Tomeo, and Joan Milas, who we already heard from. In favor of the bill is Silent Spring Institute, Jennifer Whiting, Clean Water Action, Steep, Brianna Petraka, Polly Barry, Newport Solar, Audubon Society, and Joshua Tarantino. So those will conclude the hearings on those two bills. Next